Chapter 6. I woke and ate a small breakfast. Where is everyone? I wondered. Picking up the iPhone, I decided to text Max. It shouldn't be too much to expect a text back, something from his secretary. It's not like him to do this now. But he had done this before. That was before we were married. Even then he would at least spend the night with me, even if he disappeared in the morning. Finally, I understood what was happening. He would get Jonas out of one fix after another. Now Jonas has ensnared me into his web of deceit, where he is the only one who comes out on top. Today is our day, mine and Max, where we forget our troubles and have our date night without children, animals, nannies, and noise. We just lie back and engage in the bases of sexual deviancy we can create for each other. After last night, I'm looking forward to the peace and quiet of being tied up and let him have his way with me. Maybe I can get out of my head the visions of Robert naked. I reached for my phone and called Brandon. Brandon, pick me up in front of my building at 7 tonight. Get the midnight blue Bentley at 6:30. I need you to drop me off at 455 Park Avenue. I'll remain at that address until the next day. Anything else you would like me to do, Alex? Go back to my garage when you have dropped me off and park the car. Then get the car the next day about 9 a.m. and return to the same address, and I'll wait for you in the lobby. I'll be there, Brandon said without questions. I'm sure he was beginning to think all kind of unsavory thoughts about me. I can't blame him, because I had a few that were running around and tormenting me as well. I tried calling Max again. He had his phone off. That was unusual. He knew never to turn his phone off. Because of the boys, he had to be available in case something happened. As I struggled to dress for my big night, I heard a knock at my bedroom door. Mr. Blackstone called last night, Lupita said, walking into the room without waiting for me to tell her to enter. What did he say? I dropped the dress once I heard his name. I was nervous, wondering whether he found out about my affair. Not an affair, no, it bordered more on betrayal. He said that he tried calling you, miss, but you had your phone off and no one picked up on the house phone. He asked if everything was okay. I said it was, and he hung up. Did he say any more? Only that he would see you at the other apartment, miss. Lupita knew that we had an apartment not far from here, but what she didn't know was the salacious activities behind those doors. I could never tell her, because I didn't want to disturb her delicate sensibilities and have her raise an eyebrow at me whenever she looked at me or Max. I don't think she thought there was life after children. I gave her the address and phone number, just in case there were problems with the kids. Watching the digital clock near my bed made for a long and agonizing day. Anxious and excited to be with Max, I decided to go for a run in the park to limber up for my all-night sessions. I dressed in my running clothes, tied my hair in a ponytail, put on my running shoes and headed for the elevator. I made it to the lobby, made it through the lobby doors, and made it to the park without the embarrassment of seeing Robert. I couldn't keep this up, dreading going downstairs in fear of running into that handsome man who now haunts me in my dreams. I had to admit to myself that I enjoyed every minute of what he did, and what I did to him. I could flog him again if I wasn't afraid it would cost me everything. The thought of punishing him and the enjoyment I garnered caused me to question my sanity. Since when am I enjoying this kind of thing? When I first met Max and understood what turned him on, my initial fear was that it would take over me, and it did. I just didn't think it would involve another man. I had been out warming up and running for an hour when I heard a jogger slow down behind me. The person didn't want to pass me, which was clear enough. I slowed to almost a walk, breathing hard. Any man could pass me in a second. I continued running without looking around. If someone wanted to mug me, it would have been stupid. The park was filled to capacity, large groups of people old and young sitting around on the grass eating snacks from vendors, and couples lounging on the benches with their dogs on leashes. When I jogged further and I could see my building, I stopped to catch my breath, panting hard, bending down holding onto my knees. And the unknown person stopped. I could hear his sluggish breath, and it wasn't because he wasn't in shape. I lifted my body and gradually turned to face the person behind me, standing so patient, standing so close we could share the same space. I stared into his large blue eyes, his face expressive. I knew somehow before it was Robert. His body covered up with sweatpants and a pullover revealing taut muscles hiding under his shirt, which made him hot and me wanting him. "Why are you following me?" I said, comfortable and with courage because my apartment set directly ahead, and all I had to do was cross at the light, and I was home. But women have been known to disappear in their front yards, but that was in suburbia, and usually it was the husbands who made them disappear. Years of being with a man, having his children, having sex the way he wanted, didn't stop some men from doing away with their expendable wives. With all Max's money, he could make me disappear in a minute. I kept thinking that maybe he found someone, and he is thinking about that person, the way I think about Robert. Maybe he wants me to disappear. I had to rein in my thoughts because they were drifting to infidelity and murder, and this wasn't Max. We hadn't reached that bridge yet. We were at another milestone. The rich, happy, beautiful couple, with the 2 beautiful children, and a dog, who had been married only a couple of years. "I'm not following you, Alex," Robert said softly, too soft, his words mocking me and interrupting my thoughts. "Don't call me Alex," I said in a huff. "Do you know who I am?" I said, raising an eyebrow to let him know I meant business. "I'm Mrs. Blackstone." "And do you know who I am?" he countered with a soft smile. "Yes, that asshole who shows up everywhere I go." I said I was on vacation. "And if you don't mind, Mrs. Blackstone, I have a right to be here. Does your title deny me the right to this air?" "I don't think so." He made his point, and I recognized the truth. I twisted around and stood waiting for the light, and when it hit green, I jogged across the street. But I wasn't getting away from him just like that. He jogged with me and stood close behind me as the doorman opened the door. I walked to the elevators, which were side by side. I stood there hitting the button. It was the penthouse, and I had to wait for it. I could feel his eyes on my body as he stood regarding me, making me nervous. I could have beat him. He was just the sort of arrogant, good-looking fuck that begged for a good beating. I turned smiling, thinking of the possibilities. "Why are you smiling at me?" Robert queried. "Keep it up, you look lovely when you smile. You need to smile more often." "Because you are going to get what you're looking for," I said with one brow lifted. "Are you the one that will give it to me?" he said, leaning in with a smirk. He saw the look on my face. My eyes blinked. I tried to present an expression, as if he didn't matter. He was nothing to me. I even shot him a contrived smile. But he ignored me. He raised his head and sniffed. "Oh, that perfume. It smells." The elevator door finally opened. I rushed inside and he peeked his head in. "I've smelled that fragrance before. We all have our secrets. Now you know mine and I know yours." And a smile took up all the space on his face. Even his eyes smiled wickedly. "What are you talking about?" I said, startled and shaken. "I like perfume on a woman, and you like wearing it, Mrs. Blackstone," he said, stepping close to the elevator. I hit the button, and it closed in his face. I could still see that sexy grin smeared on his handsome face. I always wear my favorite perfume. Did I accidentally wear it that night? I didn't know it would be him waiting for me. I'm going to kill Jonas. My nerves were rattled. Did he know it was me? No. If that self-serving egomaniac knew, he would have shouted it to the world, or I would be a candidate for blackmail. Feeling like a prisoner who had gotten a last-minute call from the governor, I let out a full breath and rushed inside protected walls and into my room to shower. I had a few minutes to get dressed and get to the apartment on time. Rushing, I kissed my sons and said goodbye. When I reached the door, the doorman rang the buzzer informing me my chauffeur had arrived and that he was waiting for me. I said to the doorman that I'm on my way down. Because I didn't want to be late, I rushed in the elevator with my hair wet, and I wore the trench coat I had on at Jonas's place. I stepped out of my private elevator the same time Robert stepped out of the elevator across from mine with one of his girls. He startled me and I dropped my purse and all its contents scattered over the tile floor. I bent to pick up my lipstick, comb, and eyelash curler. I thought I had gathered everything from the floor until, "Mrs. Blackstone, you forgot something." Turning around, he held out his hand, and in it, a black and gold card and a black thong balled tightly in his fist. It was Jonas's card, and the thong he tore from my body when he licked me all over. "I think you'll need this." I reached for my thong, and he held it back. "Say please," he whispered, stooping down, meeting my eyes. My eyes glaring into his gleaming blue eyes. "It's not what you think," I said. "It's none of my business," he whispered, giving the thong to me, as he leaned into me. "We all have secrets, and I know yours." My eyes opened wide like saucers. The woman at his side looked on with jealousy brimming in her face. She didn't say a word. She waited as he smiled and touched my hand lightly. It looked like she knew what he was doing, and she couldn't stop him because she appeared to be his submissive. It was clear now, those girls coming and going were subs. As I pulled away from him, the notion struck me, she was his sub. Isn't that ironic? She was his sub and I was his dom. In that room, he would do anything I wanted. The problem was, he didn't know his place, or he disobeyed me on purpose. I could give him the things he needed, he desired, and wanted to be punished by me. We both possessed a morbid and dangerous fascination for each other. I scowled at him and whispered, "I know your secret and your weakness. You will never get a chance to feel that way again." I stood and strutted away. Brandon stood at the open door to my car, and I climbed in and he closed the door. I pushed the button, and the dark window slid down so I could get a better look at his face. I struck a blow, and I was enjoying the effects. His gaze long and painful, remembering the exciting moments he had when he was with me. Realizing it may never happen again, I spotted that look on his face, pale and dark, eyes fixed as if in shock. It was the same look when I informed Max that I had planned to marry, and that I would no longer be his dom. I think that is why Max was so eager to marry me, that and the children. What I gave him, he would never be able to replicate that with a wife or dom. He had it all when he wanted it. And now I was bringing it to him, and leaving this arrogant ass out in the cold, to wander around and look for something that he will never get again. He will be trying his whole life to find someone to connect with him and provide his needs with understanding. Looking at all the women he has around him is an indication of what he is looking for and hasn't found. "Mrs. Blackstone." Brandon shook me out of my thoughts. "Do you want me to wait for you?" "No, that will not be necessary. You can drop me off and I'll contact you tomorrow." "Are you going to be safe?" "Perfectly safe. I'm having a date night with my husband. You rich people sure know how to live, Brandon said, smiling and shaking his head. Max has been trying his best to be the kind of man I wanted. He has been trying too hard. I can't believe that he would give up everything to make me happy. We moved back to New York where I can be comfortable. San Francisco, although a vibrant city, just wasn't for me. I needed more. Maybe I was just a thrill seeker in hiding. Now that I have met and tamed my Mr. Black, I'm feeling as if there could be more. I don't know why I feel that way. It's probably because my hormones have been raging since Jack was born. I have everything I need and everything I've ever wanted, but something appears to be missing in my life. This scenery is divine. I have a penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, and all I can think about and wonder about is what's missing. I wonder where Max is. I voice my concerns aloud. He usually calls. The children are with the nanny at our other apartment, and tonight is our night. But every time I make a date with him, we have to reschedule. If things don't get better, then I'm going out and get a job or go back to school. I've been threatening that a lot lately. More so to an empty room. Max stated that he needs me here to take care of the children. I'm there for the children, but I feel useless because of all the nannies he has hired against my wishes. I open the door to our apartment, drop my trench coat, and my eyes wander, landing on the evening paper. I pick up the paper, sit in a chair, and read. This headline story is about a woman committing suicide. Oh, another story about a bored housewife, I murmured. She loved a man so much, but he deceived her with scores of women. Although she had beauty and money, she didn't have the one thing her husband needed and wanted, and that was an heir. Turning away from the paper, I laughed. I have that in spades. 2 sons to carry on the Blackstone name. What else does he want? I dropped the paper on the floor, and when I turned, standing in the doorway, a brilliant set of green eyes hovered over me, and they were attached to Max. He reached and picked up the paper. I see you're catching up on your daily gossip, he smiled with his brilliant white teeth. He walked close to me, his nose trailing up and down my neck, and then sniffing my hair. My skin reacting, bursting with chills. My opening heated and ready to overflow. He pulled me up into his arms. You smell delicious. I could take you now on this chair. He kneeled down in front of me and spread my legs with his hands. What are you doing? I know when you start our evening like this, you have to leave. He didn't answer me. His long lashes hiding his fantastic green eyes, then opening them wide with displeasure. He didn't want to have a conversation. He was like that. All his way or no way. He knew what I desired, and that was any part of him. I could spend my whole life loving him if he wasn't so secretive. I thought when we married it would change with him, but it became worse. He grabbed the strings of my black bikini and tore through the fine silk. The $200 underwear fell to the floor silent. The only sound came from me, and it was a whimper and moan. Max kissed the inside of my thighs gently as he wrapped his hands on each leg. Kissing my inner thighs, he found my clit waiting for him, needing him. He stared at it and began to moan. Then he placed his fingers in my folds, and taking his fingers out, he placed them to his nose and into his mouth. You have the same scent from the first time we met, he said, looking up from between my legs, his eyes sparkling with happiness and pleasure. That's because you have been neglecting your duties. As if he didn't hear me, he placed his head between my legs and his tongue found my clit. He swirled it around, and I could feel his warm breath and his warm tongue enter me. I grew more excited and pulled my bra down so he could reach my breasts without hindrance. My nipples jutted out, heated and elongated, and then his long arms found them like a ship finding a port that had been too long at sea. He squeezed my nipples until they peaked and turned red. "I love you because you have a high tolerance for pain," he said. "I hope it's more than that," I whispered. "You are the most beautiful woman I've ever seen." "More," I said. "You are the mother of my sons." "More." "I love eating you." "More." "I love making love to you." "More." "Enough." Max seized my legs and pulled me to the floor. His eyes blazing, and he passing his tongue over his lower lip. He unzipped his pants as he continued trailing his tongue around my clit, then sucking it hard. "Give me what I want and what I need," he said. His voice broke with a husky whisper. My legs were wrapped around his neck, he had my nipples in his hands, and his fingers were holding them like a vice, and I began to thrust my body into his face. And in a minute he had me coming, and I couldn't stop. I let out such a scream of satisfaction. Then a moan from the satisfied release followed. "Keep on. I want you like I have never wanted you before," he said, pulling off my robe, turning me over on my stomach, and gazing at my body with my bra now around my neck. He unhooked it and threw it to rest with my panties. He straddled me where I couldn't move, my face buried into the pillow. He leaned and reached for our supply of lubricants on the nearest table. I had agreed to this apartment and keeping an ample supply of products to enhance our lovemaking. He was a man of strange taste, and I knew it. I wanted to please him because he knew what to do to make me come on a dime. I had to be sure that he would want me as much as I needed him. I gave in to him because we had the same crazy desires, kinky sex with each other. His warm, nervous, and demanding hands spread my buttocks. He gazed at me as he put his thumb to his mouth and moistened it, before rimming it around my anus, sending chills through me. He gently placed his thumb in my anus, spreading the cold lubricant, and with his other hand, he pried open my drenched opening as he ran his fingers around. Taking his thumb out, he placed a latex on his penis. He guided his full and heated penis into me. I moaned with pleasure. He inched it in until I could feel the full length of him. Then he placed his hand under my belly and pulled my body up as I went on all fours. He began to kiss my back, gripping my hips as he made each hard thrust. His movements slow and unhurried as he crouched behind me, then he accelerated out of control. He pushed and pulled in and out of me, with me letting out a grunt until he would have his orgasm. Then another shortly afterwards. That was his way of preparing me for what I knew to be an endless night of kink. I didn't mind because that was what he enjoyed above all else, but it had become our regular lovemaking. He eats me, make me come, then he comes inside my dark passage. We had been having anal sex more than vaginal sex. I began to wonder why. I should have been happy that he desired me, knowing his dysfunctions with sex, but there was something missing. Had the joy gone out for both of us, and it was just something we did out of convenience? I wondered. When he finished, he lay on the side of me. He was exhausted. I knew why with all the businesses that he promised to sell, and for some reason he couldn't. He claimed it was because it was St. John who had tried to ruin him. Just like the past, he made love to me and then fell asleep. I had been his sleeping aid for more than 2 years since we had been married. This apartment was our hideaway from the children, from the world. We could forget everyone and everything. After our orgies were over, then we would resume our regular husband-wife duties in our apartment across town. Isn't it wonderful to have this kind of arrangement? I couldn't answer that question now. But I was too young to leave alone with raging hormones, especially with a handsome man lurking around and sending me flowers and wanting me to flog him and who knows what else. My indiscretions caused me to wonder about what other arrangements my Mr. Black might have. I wondered what he was doing when he left me to go around the world to sell his properties. I should have been happy, but I wasn't. There was something missing, and it was in me. After all, he agreed to sell everything because of me, and now I'm having second thoughts. And I couldn't stop thinking that I had betrayed him with another man, and maybe he was doing the same thing to me with another woman. The clock struck 5 a.m., and I reached over and found Max gone. I craved waking up and lying in his arms. Now I felt like any warm body would do. He had made coffee and left me his usual notes. I couldn't stop him from writing those damn notes to me. Especially since he rushed from the bed, leaving me so early in the morning. I had been angry ever since I met him in Montana, and I requested no more notes. Text me, for God's sake. I reached over and there it was. I decided to open it and read it. Usually, I ball it up and throw it into that gold-plated $5,000 basket. What are we doing with all that expensive shit? I asked myself. Too many homes, too many employees, and more clothes and shit than I will ever wear in a lifetime. I took a deep breath and began reading his note. -- My darling Alex, I have arranged for you to interview your driver. He will be yours exclusively to do as you wish. You don't have to wait on my driver because he will be tied up with me until I sell my hotels. I have a meeting this afternoon, and I'll be late. If I'm too late, kiss the boys for me. Love you. Max. I explained to Max that I didn't need a driver. I could take a taxi if I needed to go anywhere. Now I have my driver, and I forgot to pass it by him. I've noticed that he doesn't question me about anything lately. It would be nice if he asked about my day or the weather. Once you get into the weather territory, you know you have a problem with your marriage.